Hello and welcome back to the OTB channel. So, you've watched some of my videos and you picked up on the Slackware 15 installation and you've installed it. But you're not quite sure where to go from there. You've been told that Slackware doesn't resolve dependencies and it can get quite complicated to install additional packages. Well, this video is probably for you, because I'm going to show just how easy it is to install and update additional packages using a range of Slackware helper applications. See you after the intro. Okay, welcome back. So I thought I'd do this video today because I want to try and cut through some of the confusion that seems to be out there. A lot of people seem to be giving Slackware 15 a try and they're getting through the installation process and then they're getting stuck. They're getting confused about this issue of dependency checking and how to install additional packages. But in actual fact, it's really easy. Slackware in itself does not do dependency checking, and neither does Slackpackage, Slackware's package manager. But to be honest, there is no need for it to do dependency checking. As long as you have done a full installation, this is really important, everything within Slackware has already been sorted as far as dependencies are concerned. So you can install and upgrade all of the Slackware packages without ever having to worry about dependencies with Slackpackage. There's also a plugin called SlackPackage Plus, which again is incredibly useful if you want to set up a multi-lib system, or you want to use the Mate Slackbuilds repo or the Cinnamon Slackbuilds repo or a couple of packages from Alien Bob's. And in the main, again, you don't need to worry too much about dependency checking as long as you've done a full installation. Certainly you don't with MSB, certainly you don't with CSB, but if you're going to use additional repos with the SlackPackage Plus plugin, you do need to do a little bit of work just to make sure that, you're doing what you need to do. Personally, I tend not to set up multi-lib systems on most of my ThinkPads, and I tend to just use Slackpackage. I also will not tend to install Mate or Cinnamon these days because my preference is for window managers that I'll install separately. And so I will just use Slackpackage, and for anything else I need, I will use Slackbuilds. I've been using Linux and Slackware really for 18 years now, and I found the most consistent, reliable results come from not mixing too many separate sources. So you can get pre-compiled Slackware packages from all over the place, but I prefer, to be honest, to just use the standard packages and Slackbuilds. There are some exceptions to that. I will tend to install Alien Bob's VLC because that can be quite complicated with all the options, and I will also use his LibreOffice because it's a bit of a pig to compile. But beyond that, I will use Slackbuilds for everything. And Slackbuilds don't have to be difficult to install, because there are a range of helper applications out there which will do the heavy lifting for you, which will help you to resolve the dependencies and make the whole process really easy. Yes, when you're installing these additional packages using Slackbuilds, you will be compiling from source, but the work is done for you. Yes, it's going to take a little while, but if you're installing on multiple systems, my philosophy is compile once, install multiple times. And what I mean by that is once I've built a Slackbuild package, I will tend to save it, upload it to a GitLab repo, and when I come to installing on another system, and I've got multiple ThinkPads, as many of you know, I will simply just pull down the Git repo and in a single command, upgrade package, install new, I'll install all of my compiled Slackbuilds. So it can be really easy to actually manage and install software on Slackware. And I think people get themselves tied in knots about where they go from here. And given that so many people seem to be trying it now, I thought that this might be of some help. I know, for instance, even Matt from the Linux Cast is going to do a long-term, 1 month long review of Slackware. And hopefully he'll appreciate this as well. So there are lots of third-party applications out there that help you manage Slackbuilds. So they're not Slackware itself, they're all third-party applications. I'm just going to look at 3. I'm going to look at 2 of probably the most popular, which is SBO Package and sbotools. And I'm going to look at a third that I've been playing with for the last week or so, just in a virtual machine called slpkg. So I'm just getting to know that now, but it does seem to do the job pretty well. So without further ado, let's start off by looking at SBO Package. Right, so what you see in front of you is a newly installed version of Slackware 15. I've applied the updates, but that's about it. I've also installed the first of the helper applications that we're going to look at today, called SBO Package, which you can get from sbopkg.org. On the page, the most important thing is, initially, you'll see that there is a link to the package there, which you can just download. It has no dependencies at all, so you just need to use an install package and install it. The page is quite useful because SBO Package is a sort of hybrid package in a way that you can use it with a GUI, with a curses-based GUI, or you can also just use command line options. You can also use it with, I suppose you could call it a partner application that comes with SBO Package called SQG, which basically produces queues, which I'll talk a little about to start off with. On the SBO Package website, you've also got a link to some docs, which give you essentially links to man pages and a couple of links on how to do various things, including, importantly, if you're running current, how to use SBO Package with current. In fact, what I've got open here, once you've installed the package, it will actually create a configuration file in etc sbo package sbopkg.conf. And essentially, if you wanted to use this with current, I'm just going to go down here a little bit. It's really simple. You change the repo branch variable to current, and you'd change the repo name to, I think it's SBO Git. Let me just have a quick look to make sure that I've got that correct. Yeah, SBO Git. So there's a link about how to do that. So on this latest version, and I believe this is a new edition, you can also alter, if you wish, the default repo that SBO Package uses, which in this case is the Slackware UK repo. So you've got a fair few things that you can do with it. Let's just come out of that now, and I'm going to shut this particular terminal. So I've said I've installed SBO Package, which I have. So how are we going to use it? Well, in the first instance, we want to sync the Slackbuilds repo with SBO Package. So on first run, you'd simply, as root, type SBO Package -R. And it will go off and it will pull down essentially a version of Slackbuilds. And it puts it into var lib SBO package SBO 15. So we can see we're using the latest version. Right, so I just pause that for a second to let it finish. It's a little bit like a BSD system in a way that we're pulling down the ports. Let me just clear that. So we've pulled down the Slackbuilds repo. Now all we need to do is type SBO package to launch the GUI. And let me make this or maximize it to get the full screen. Personally, I don't tend to use this part of it. I tend to use the command line just because I'm more comfortable. But I suspect that one of the reasons this is so popular is it does have a GUI if that's what you want to do. We have the option on the GUI, obviously, to sync with the remote repo, which you're going to want to do quite regularly. As new Slack builds get added to the repo, you're going to want to make sure that SBO package has access to them. You can view the change log. You can look at any SBO packages that you have installed, and you can see I've got nothing installed at the moment. If you have any installed, you can look at potential updates, and you can use this to update those. You can browse the Slackbuilds repository. You can see that. And you can also search for a particular package. So let's search for something simple. Let's search for dmenu. Oops. And it helps if I can type as normal. And you can see there that dmenu is there under the desktop category. So you've also got another couple of options, J4 dmenu desktop and Pine entry dmenu. I'm just going to leave it highlighted on the desktop dmenu entry and hit OK. We now have a few options, and these options are pretty important because the key thing to remember about SBO package is it does not do dependency management here. So you are going to want to read the relevant files on the Slackbuilds website to see what dependencies are required. So for dmenu, I'm going to hit README, and there you see a requires entry. And as you're probably aware, dmenu is a really simple package. It doesn't actually require anything, so that's all good. So I don't need to go much further than that, really. And I can just go down and install it. You'll see some other options here. You can actually view the Slackbuild file. You can customize the Slackbuild file if you want. You can add build options. You can just extract the tarball. You can add dmenu to a queue, and this is quite important. If there were other dependencies to take into account, you may want to build up a queue of different applications that you want to install in a particular order. But in this case, there's no issues. There are no additional dependencies. So I'm just going to install dmenu, and it's going to pull it down. Done. So if I now go back to the main menu and I look at installed SBO packages, you can see now dmenu is installed. Clearly, it's not always going to be that quick, but dmenu is really, really easy. Let's pick something, though, a little bit more complicated. Let's perhaps look for PCman FM, which tends to be something that I personally use. So I'm going to hit OK. And what I want to do now is I want to look at the README file. And I can see straight away that this requires a package called libfm. Now, I could, of course, add the libfm package to the queue and then install PCman FM, but that in itself isn't enough. If I open up the Slackbuilds web page here, on the PCman FM page, you'll see that it's pulling this for information, obviously, from here. We know libfm is required, but if I click on libfm, you can see that that in itself requires LX menu data and menu cache, and you can keep going on, and that doesn't require anything additional. What about menu cache? That requires libfm extra. So if you're going to build a queue, you have to make sure that you've got the full rack of dependencies installed. Okay. So let me show you how we actually manage this, because one of the great things about SBO package, oops, let me just cancel and exit. One of the great things about SBO package is it also has like a partner application called SQG, which will build a queue for you of all relevant dependencies. And the way that we do this, and you do this on the command line, guys, you simply type SQG -P, and let's go for PCman FM. Okay, all good. That has now built a queue, and it's built a queue in var lib SBO package queue. So you can see I'm in var lib now. So you can see there is an SBO package directory. So SBO package, and there should be a queue directory as well. Let's have a look there. And you can see, in fact, let me just clean this up a little bit. You can see that we have a file there called pcmanfm.sqf. That is essentially just a text file, so I can cut it out. And you can see what it actually contains is the various different packages that are needed to resolve all of the relevant dependencies. So, all good. Now, I can just install everything from the queue here. I could just do SBO package -I, and this is how I would do it, PCman FM, and it tells me, do you want to use a queue file? Do you just want to install the package on its own, or do you want to abort? Well, if I press Q now, it'll use the queue file, and it will install each of these in the right order so that everything works. I'm going to abort here, and I'm going to show you how this works with the GUI. If I did SBO package again, and it really helps if my spelling could improve. There you go. Right, so I'm going to, let's have a look, manage the queue. And what I want to do is I want to load a saved queue. Now, you know I've already done that. I've saved a queue, and you can see it's there. It's PCman FM. So I'm going to hit the space bar, and I'm going to click OK. I can now view the current queue, and you can see that all those packages that need to be installed for PCman FM are there. So let me hit OK. Let me hit process the current queue. And it gives me the option, do you just want to download everything? Do you want to download and build the packages? Or do you want to download, build, and install? I'm going to choose the last option. It gives me a final kind of check just to let me know what it's going to be doing. And that all sounds good to me, so I'm going to hit start. I'm probably going to pause this for a while, and we'll come back once it's done. So that's now done, and it asks me if I'd like to keep the queue or clear it. Well, I'll generally clear it. The queue has now been cleared. Great, so I can come out of that now and exit. And if I go into my menu, it's probably in accessories. There we are, File Manager, PCman FM, all installed with all the relevant dependencies. So all good. And if I do ls, it hasn't actually got rid of the queue itself. It's just removed it from SBO packages, I suppose memory, if you like. Okay, now, you can, of course, do most of this on the command line. So once you've used SQG to create a queue, you can do SBO package -I to install the package, and it'll ask you, do you just want to install it or do you want to install it from a queue? You can do SBO-S if you want to look at all of the various readmes for a particular package. Let's take, for instance, polybar. Now, if you just do this as is, you're going to get quite a lot of information. So what I tend to do is I will tend to add a grep -I and search for lines that say requires. And you can see here, polybar requires xcb-util-xrm. So all good. You can also just do a straightforward search, and for that you would do SBO package -G polybar. And it'll tell you where it is and whether or not it's available. And it's in the desktop section of Slackbuilds. So, all good. If you want to use this, I'm just going to exit from that. If you want to use SBO package, I found it to be fairly reliable. SQG is what makes the difference, because that builds the queues that sort out all of your dependencies. And for years I did use it until I discovered the next package we're going to look at, which is sbotools. So this next helper application is called sbotools, and it's essentially a selection of Perl scripts, which again works very similar to a BSD system, which would pull down a series of ports and install from there. This one does attempt to do dependency resolution right from the word go without having to generate a separate queue file. And I'm quite biased here because I've been using this problem-free for a number of years now, and this tends to be my preferred helper application. I have to say, though, I'm a little bit concerned at the fact that we don't appear to have a new package available as yet for version 15. It's not a problem, though, because you have got the option here to specify a particular URL that you want to use. And I have read, I saw a forum post on Linux Questions a week or so ago saying that if you don't actually specify a URL and you're using Slackware 15, that it will tend to use the Git repo, i.e. the current repo, if you use it directly with Slackware 15 without configuring it. But I'm going to configure it anyway. And I'm going to configure it to use basically the Slackware UK Slackbuilds mirror for 15. And the way I do that, I'm just going to copy the URL to the Slackbuilds repo there. And let's open up a terminal. And there's a number of different scripts with sbotools. And the first one I'm going to use, let me just make this a little bit bigger. There we go. Oh, that's probably a little bit too big. And the first one I'm going to use is something called sbopkg, which adds an entry to the configuration file. So I need to be root as normal. I'm going to type sbopkg -r, and then I'm going to paste in the URL that I want to use. Slackware UK actually has the option to use rsync rather than just HTTP. So I am going to actually just change that to rsync. So sbopkg -r, and then the repo I want to use, job done. What that will do is it will actually create a directory in etc called sbotools. And within sbotools, you'll see that there is now a configuration file called sbotools.conf. And if I cat that out, you'll see that it now contains that Slackware UK repo. Now, I've been using this on all of my installations, and it works really well. A little bit like SBO Package, though, you are going to have to pull down the repo to start off with. And the way we do that is we use SBO snap and we type fetch, and it will now fetch down a copy of the repo. And again, I'll pause this while it gets on with what it needs to do. So that's pulled down the repo, and from here I can install packages, I can remove packages, I can update the tree, I can upgrade various packages, and I can, of course, also search for packages. If I wanted to search for packages, I would use the SBO find command, and let's say we go for polybar again, and yes, it's found a polybar directory in the repo that it's just pulled down. If I wanted to read the info file from that, I would use SBO find with the -i option. And there it tells me it requires xcb-util-urm. Or if I wanted to actually pull down and read the full repo, sorry, the README file for polybar, can be quite useful here because it's telling me about the optional dependencies. And if you're going to use polybar, by the way, with i3, it tells you here that you need this JSON CPP file to actually use the i3 module. So always good to have a look. Never just go, blazing into these packages without reading the information first. If I want to update the tree, well, that's easy. I simply type SBO check, and it's checking that the tree is up to date, which it will be because I've just pulled everything down, of course. So let's clean that. When I do an SBO check, it will also let me know if any packages are outdated and can be upgraded. And to do that, I simply use SBO upgrade with the name of the package, or if there's multiple packages, I just do all. So dead simple. So let's pull down something fairly straightforward here. Let's do Rofi. So let's install Rofi, SBO install, Rofi. Tells me straight away that that extra dependency is required. So do I want to proceed with that? Yes, I do. It says it looks like there's extra options. Would you like to set any when the Slack build is run? I'm not going to bother. Proceed with Rofi. Yes. Am I sure that I want to continue? Yes, I do. Off I go. And there we go. All installed. So sbotools really is very simple. It automatically builds a queue, it sets everything up, it installs packages for you, you can update, you can upgrade, you can search, you can have a look at infos and README files. And personally, if I was to compare this to SBO Package, because I tend to work on the command line, this is just one less step. I don't have to generate a queue to start off with. But to be honest, they're both pretty robust, and I've had a lot of success with both. So let's have a look at the last package now that I've only been playing with over the last week. So my knowledge and experience of this is not as much as the previous two, and that's a package called SL Package. Right, so last but not least, we have SL Package. You can see the Git page, basically, which is dslackw.gitlab.io/SL SL package. If you just search for it in Google, it'll take you straight there. It's perhaps a little bit different to the other two helper applications that we've looked at, in as much as it's not just for Slackbuilds. It also allows you to manage other repos if you wish. And it will do dependency resolution, but if you're going to use other repos, the dependency resolution is going to be dependent upon whether or not the info files actually contain the correct requires entries, the metadata, in other words. Some of you might have already spotted, as you've been looking at Slackbuilds, that there is a repo out there called Slack Only, which contains pre-built packages of all the Slackbuilds. The only problem with Slack Only is the metadata isn't always what it should be, so I wouldn't rely on automatic dependency checking for it. But anyway, I'm not going to look at other repos here. I'm just going to use SL package as a Slackbuild helper. And to be honest, its website is pretty thorough in terms of the information that it gives you. You can download the latest tarball, but it's also available as a Slackbuild, so I've just used sbotools to install it. So it goes through how you should use it. It gives you optional dependencies, and you'll need this Python 3 Python dialog for bringing up a curses interface. And potentially it can support all of these different repos. Okay, so that in itself is quite interesting. Apparently, I can easily edit the configuration file by just using that. So let's open a terminal and let's type that and see what that brings up. And that brings up its configuration file, which has all the normal stuff. But okay, let's just come away from that and go back to the web page. It includes basically a man page here, which, you know, you've got lots and lots of options here. And I'm not going to look at every single one of them, but let's go to the examples file that is listed at the bottom of that page. And it takes you through exactly what you can do. So let's look at some examples. The first example allows you to choose which repo you're going to use. As it says there, though, you can only get a curses interface up if you have this Python 3 Python dialog page up. So the format that it uses, it's pretty straightforward, to be honest. I'm just doing a copy of that. You would do slpkg -s. Now, the -s option is probably the one that you're going to be using the most, because that will download the Slackbuild. It will install it as well at the end. You then have to mention which repo you want to use. Now, because this has the facility to use lots of repos, SL package -s SBO is what you're generally going to use. And we're going to install it now to install this Python 3 Python dialog package. So it's telling us to start off with, we have to use SL package update. So, okay, SL package update. Right, and it's going off to all the various repos that it's set up for, and we'll see what they are in a minute, and wait for that to finish. Right, okay, so now that that's finished, let's try and run that command again. Okay, so the following package will be automatically installed and upgraded with the latest version. Would you like to continue? Yes, please. And it looks like that is now installed. Great, so let's go back to the web page. The next thing that we want to run is SL package repo enable. This is to set our repos. And we should be able to bring up a GUI. Right, so I can see here automatically that all the repos that we could potentially use are down here. Enabled by default, you've got SBO, Slackbuilds, and also Slack. I only want to use this for Slackbuilds. So I've highlighted Slack. I'm going to hit the space bar. The only enabled repo now is simply Slackbuilds, and I'm going to click OK. I'm going to do a Slack package update again, and that's all good. Right, so now I should be able to use that basic command to install whatever I want. So let's have a look. What should we install now? How about we go for something like Alacrity? So I would do SL package -s SBO Alacrity. It's installing Alacrity. There are no additional dependencies. So let's hit yes and let it do its thing. Right, so that took a little bit longer than the other packages because there's a lot more to install, but it's now finished. So let's go up here. Where are we going to find that? Probably in System, and there it is. And there you go. All good. So it seems to work as advertised. I suppose ultimately we would only know how good it is at resolving dependencies if we pick something really complicated. Now, I'm not going to install this as such, but I'm going to ask it to look at Xmonad, which, as you're probably aware, has many, many dependencies, including GHC. So let's have a look at what it's doing. It's obviously doing what it's doing. And, well, it's given us a list of exactly what is going to be installed. Now, if you want to install Xmonad this way, GHC, I will warn you now, is going to take a long, long time to actually install. But nevertheless, yeah, it seems to be pulling the information from all the info files and doing what it's doing. Key thing is, though, and I mentioned this right at the beginning, if you're installing on multiple systems, you don't have to compile these packages from source every time you do an installation. And the reason is, each of these helper applications has actually stored a copy of the package in your TMP directory. So what I tend to do is, after I've done the installations, I tend to save them to a separate folder and I upload them to my personal GitLab page. And when I'm moving on to install a package on another system, I'll simply pull all those packages down from GitLab and do an upgrade package install new, and it's done in minutes. Okay, I think that's probably enough for today. Let's have a quick chat. Right, so there's 3 Slackbuild helper applications that you may want to look at. I'd like to emphasize at this point that in terms of dependency checking, I found sbotools and SBO Package, they're the ones I've had the most experience with, to be very reliable. What they don't do dependency checking on, though, is the Slackware packages themselves. So if you don't do a full installation, because it's assumed you have done a full installation, you may come across problems. This is why you'll hear everybody saying a full installation is what we would recommend. But as long as you've done that, actually installing additional software is simplicity itself. And what I love about Slackware is the fact that it's reliable, it's solid, And once you get used to it, it's really easy to maintain. And I hope more and more people start to find the same as I have. Right, guys, that's as much as I'm going to do today. It's a bank holiday weekend here in the UK. I would have been out on my bike, but it's pouring with rain today, so you get a video. Otherwise, you wouldn't have got a video today, but I hope you've enjoyed this. Obviously, if you have, please like and subscribe. And guys, you know, if you'd like to support me on Patreon, please do so. I'm not pushing that too hard at the moment, but I'm very appreciative of the people who are currently supporting me. Guys, that's it for today. Thanks very much, and I'll see you when I see you. Cheers.